It's all right. We'll get the Baruch Hu and we'll see what happens. Okay, we're noise base. Rebbe just, noise base, we're learning about the Indian of Karbonos and how it serves as a model for our Avodas Hashem. And just like in the Karbonos, in the first base of Mikdash, there was a miracle that the fire came down from above. So too in our desires to change our Nefesh Bahamis, there's a fire that comes down from above. What's the fire that comes down from above? The Nefesh Elokis, the godly soul. And what's Avodah all about? And this is the last thing we saw. Sort of again, anything we see after 8:30 is said in a hurry. So we'll say it again slowly. The pasuk says, "V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha." Love God with all your heart. The word "lev" means heart. Levavcha, so that means two hearts, two bases. What are the two hearts? So Chazal say Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara. That's the language of Chazal. The idea of Nefesh Bahamis, Nefesh Elokis does not exist in Chazal, that language. Comes into Chassidus is the source of that language. We explain it Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara, meaning Nefesh Bahamis, Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh Bahamis. The Nefesh Elokis obviously wants to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but the Nefesh Bahamis also can love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, through his Beinenus Eloki, Shemizbeinen, that what do we do? Being Mizbeinen, but Devarim, Shem Nefesh Bahamis Yochel Lasiga, to contemplate things the Nefesh Bahamis can understand. What does the Nefesh Bahamis understand? Anything human intellect can understand. Human intellect is extremely sophisticated and can understand very, very many deep and amazing things. Okay, what if you teach your Nefesh Bahamis Chassidus? Doctor, would you like a copy?
Huh?
Would you like a copy?
Show enough. Show enough.
Would you? What does the Nefesh? What does the intellect of the Nefesh Bahamis understand? Just about any idea, especially if that idea has something to do with the reality that we experience. So if you can just learn about Elokus in such a way that your Nefesh Bahamis understands it, learn Torah in general, Chassidus in particular, so then the Nefesh Bahamis becomes well-versed in godly reality. What does that mean in real terms? That I can become well-versed in godly reality because conscious me is my Nefesh Bahamis. That person I referred to as I, spelt with a capital letter in the language we are speaking, even if it appears in the middle of a sentence. In Hungarian, is I spelt with a capital letter in the middle of a sentence? No. In French, is I spelled je, spelt with a capital letter in the middle of a sentence? No. In Spanish, is yo. Yo! Everybody is woke. Yo! Is yo spelled with a capital letter in the middle of a sentence? No. But in English, I is. German, they don't spell it with a capital letter, do they? In the middle of a sentence? I don't think so.
In Swahili, I think.
In Swahili, they might. I think it's definitely apropos that Germans, when they refer to themselves, say ich. I think that's it. The only problem saying that is it's also Yiddish, but we'll forget that part. But the Nefesh Bahamis naturally will put a great emphasis on I. There's no doubt about that. But can it be educated to out of that? Yes, absolutely, 100%. Every conscious thing you and I do is our Nefesh Bahamis. How do we get that Nefesh Bahamis interested in Elokus? So that's what the Rebbe says. Learn about the Eibishter in such a way that human intellect can understand. And so human intellect likes ideas, right? Humans generally like ideas. Even people who aren't necessarily what we would call intellectuals. There are a lot of people who aren't intellectuals who are extremely bright. You don't have to be an intellectual to be bright, right? Okay. I was always amazed that, they used to make fun of George Bush's intellect. Well, and then I listened to an interview with him for about 40 minutes. And he just knew an unbelievable amount of information that he was talking about with this interviewer. Now, he doesn't sound particularly bright, but I mean, I think that's just, Northerners have these things about Southern accents. And he was definitely not an intellectual, but he was very bright. You couldn't be bright and you could not be bright and hold. He had a tremendous amount of information in there that he was explaining clearly and succinctly. It was unbelievable. I said, wow.
There are plenty of intellectuals who are not very bright.
What?
There are plenty of intellectuals who are not very bright.
Oh, okay, there you go. The other way around, right?
Pseudo-intellect.
Okay, plenty. But there are people who work intellectually, right? And there are people who work emotionally. Generally, they would tend to be more of a thinker than a feeler, or a feeler more than a thinker, etc. etc. Okay, fine, but that has nothing to do with intellect per se, right? So intellect can understand many, many things. And what if I teach my intellect about a Kadosh Baruch Hu? So then my intellect will find a Kadosh Baruch Hu interesting, because the intellect finds ideas interesting. Almost everybody. Right? And again, you don't have to be an intellectual to find ideas interesting. Most people do. So if you learn about the Eibishter, most people find that interesting. Okay, so we're going to start from the fourth line, even though we read it, but we're going to start because we read it quickly. Third line, end of the third line. Degam. Amar Zal Mishnei Yitzrecha. Degam nefesh bahamis yeloi avel elokus. That also the nefesh bahamis can love God. Me, that person I refer to as I can love God. By the clothing of the godly soul in the animal soul, which means the animal soul expresses the godly soul. A lavush is a means of expression. That's a lavush, a garment. Machshava dibur ma'aser, the three garments of the soul. That's how the soul expresses itself. It thinks, it speaks, it does. Both souls. That at first the Nefesh Bahamis has no understanding or sensitivity in godly matters at all. If not educated about it, and if not introduced to the idea of divine reality, so the Nefesh Bahamis will not necessarily have anything to do with it. Right? What will it be sensitive to? It will be able to tell you the difference between a Cabernet Sauvignon from 1982 and a Cabernet Sauvignon from 1979. Because what did this person sensitize themselves to? Wine. They've gone to wine tasting parties for a very long time, and they're very sensitive to wine. Okay, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it'd be nicer to be sensitive to God. Can a person educate themselves to be that? Yes, absolutely. The person was not born knowing the difference between a 1979 and a 1982, right? A California grape as opposed to a, I don't know, whatever, a Golan Heights grape. Oh, this is a fine texture. And then they write those things on the bottle. Like, those guys must get paid a fortune. Now I guess it's computers. But in the old days, guys got paid a fortune. Sweet, mellow, peachy taste with all this stuff they write. Okay, great, good, fine, leave me alone.
Does our Nefesh Elokis evolve at all during our lifetime?
Nefesh Elokis? Yes, you can bring it in. The Nefesh Elokis in its essence doesn't change. But that aspect of the Nefesh Elokis that's clothed in the body is affected greatly by what goes on in the body. It doesn't ever lose its love for Kadosh Baruch Hu, but it can be affected, and that's what happens generally after most people leave this world. They have to spend some time in a particular place cleansing their Nefesh Elokis from all the schmutz that the Nefesh Bahamis exposed it to in Olam Hazeh. Right? So it gets soiled by the garments of idiocy that we involve our poor Nefesh Elokis in. It's that's the third of the three different levels of contemplation and meditation that the Alter Rebbe talks about in Tanya. To have rachamim, to have rachmanis, to have mercy on your Nefesh Elokis. Just feel sorry for it. Schlepping it to a bar. What are you doing to this poor Nefesh Elokis? Don't walk in there. You know how much pain the Nefesh Elokis is going through going into this place? Why would you do that to yourself? it's a part of myself I might be completely insensitive to, so that I'll do that to myself. If I lost feeling in my hand, I could hit it with a hammer, nothing would happen, right? If I don't have any feeling in this hand, God forbid, right? The nerves don't work. Bang, bang with a hammer. Okay, so we can do that to our nefesh elokis if we have no sensitivity to it. And it's affected by that. It can also be elevated to the extent that it's connected to its source more powerfully through positive action. The tchila, the nefesh b'amis, has no sensitivity to elokus. Amnam, however, al yadei hislavshus and nefesh elokis, by virtue of the inclothing of the nefesh elokis, which means allowing the nefesh elokis to express itself through the nefesh b'amis. What does the nefesh elokis want to talk about, think about? God. Okay. What if I can get the nefesh elokis to get my nefesh b'amis on board with that? Umizbeinen bizbeinenus eloki. This is the line that has to be remembered, memorized. That a person contemplates, godly contemplation, meditation, if that word is cooler and makes you feel better. The gama nefesh b'amis yukol hasigay. That also the nefesh b'amis can understand. And again, we talked about it very, very quickly. That means sitting and reading Zohar, if I don't understand it, is going to have some sort of positive residual effect on me. But it's not going to affect my nefesh b'amis. Because my nefesh b'amis, again, if I don't understand it, my nefesh b'amis doesn't understand it, and as holy as it is, so again, it's holy, there's no question, but my nefesh b'amis, what does it get from that? It doesn't understand a word I'm saying. So there is some sort of, this is called makif, right? Some makif residual effect, but not long lasting. Whereas if I sit down and learn an idea about a Kadosh Baruch Hu that I can understand and repeat to someone else, so now my nefesh b'amis is a kli, is a vessel for this godly understanding, this godly reality, and can contemplate it and think about it, right? So it becomes part of my life. We mentioned earlier, French art is not part of our life necessarily. Why not? Never thought about it. Right? If you were to think about it, it would become part of your life. And you'd use French art as a mashal for all sorts of things, as a parable for all sorts of things that happen in your life. Right? Because whatever it is that you're really into, so you use that as mashalim, as parables for things. Because that's what you're thinking about most of the time. Right? Rav Yol Khan came to Eretz Yisrael to Farbrengen, usually around Yutes Kislev, just about every year after Gimel Tammuz. So unfortunately, he had more time. So he used to come to Eretz Yisrael. He grew up here. He used to come to Eretz Yisrael to Farbrengen, and he would be taken from Chabad house to Chabad house, Chabad shul all over the country. There would be huge Farbrengen here in Yerushalayim on Yutes Kislev in Binyanei Uma. There would be a couple of thousand people there, and then he'd go around the country. So I knew someone. I heard in a Farbrengen, so I was Farbrengen. That person who was Farbrengen knew his driver. Not driver every year, someone who took him around one year. Took Rav Yol around one year. Now Rav Yol wrote the Maamer that we're learning. He didn't actually write up this because this is the Friedrich Rebbe. He wrote most of the Maamer that we learn. Any Mugadik Maamer, any edited Maamer. So who edited it? Who wrote it? Rav Yol. The Rebbe would edit it, but Rav Yol would write it up and give it back to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would edit, and it'd go back and forth until we ended up with an edited, finished product. So it was Rav Yol. So Rav Yol, he knows everything the Rebbe said. He wrote it all down. He reviewed it every Shabbos after Farbrengen. There would be a few reviews on the floor of 770, because not everybody could hear the Rebbe. Right, so people would review the Farbrengen. So Rav Yol would review the Farbrengen. The Rebbe would finish Farbrengen at 4:30 in the afternoon. So then you'd go from wherever you were, you go down to the floor of 770, and there were different people sitting around, and there was a review in English. There was usually one or two in English, one or two in Hebrew. Right, there were three of those, one or two of each, depending on the week. And one in Yiddish. Rav Yol usually did the Yiddish, right? Sometimes he did Hebrew, right? So people would just, after the Rebbe talked for 2.5, 3 hours, 3.5 hours, they would just review everything the Rebbe said after the Farbrengen. The Rebbe asked this question, and he gave this answer. That was Rav Yol. So he was being driven around Eretz Yisrael and Farbrengen in different places. And he was basically saying the same thing every night. So the driver was sort of surprised, because it's not like, I'll put this in crass terms. It's not that he doesn't have more material, right? He has what to say, but he's talking about the same thing every night. For bringing about the same thing. So after 3 or 4 nights, he asked him, why are you saying the same thing every night? I mean, you know so much. Why the same thing every night? So Rav looked at him perplexed. He said, well, that's what I'm thinking about.
Wow.
What ideas in Aveda and what ideas in Chassidus was Rav thinking about? Those ideas. So what was he talking about in Farbrengen? Those ideas, because what's a Farbrengen? He's telling him what he's thinking about. What's bothering him right now in his life? Right? So you sit down for Farbrengen. What are you going to talk about? You're going to say drushes? Okay, right. If you're not going to Farbrengen, you're just going to say drushes. So you sit down before and you write down all sorts of very, very nice little divrei Torah, and you say some divrei Torah at the Farbrengen. But say they're good. You took a Farbrengen, turned it into a class, and you should be hung from a tree. Right? What's a Farbrengen? A Farbrengen is you sit down and talk about what's bothering you, what you've been thinking about. One story leads to another. You end up who knows where. You forgot where you came from. Right? That's a Farbrengen. That's the way it works. Right? That's why they say preparing a Farbrengen is not a thing Hasidim do. Now the Rebbeim used to prepare certain things that they wanted to say in the Farbrengen. There were things they wanted to talk about, but all sorts of other things came up also. Right? So how do I have Elokus in there? Well, I put it in there. How do I have all the other stuff in there? It got put in there. By virtue of contemplating godliness in a way that human intellect can appreciate and understand and remember, Nasi Hiskarvus and Nebamis. This brings the Nefesh Bamis close. This we didn't read. This is as far as we go. As is said elsewhere, Shenase Chakika Klolis. Chakika it means to engrave. In this context, it would be an impression. That it's made a general impression, b'nefesh b'hamis, the elokus hu gam kein davar hamuvan v'hamusag. That godliness is also something that can be understood and comprehended. There's aspects of godliness that are completely and totally beyond our comprehension. That's true. But what did the Eibishter do in His great mercy? He also took aspects of Himself and put it in a form that you and I can talk about and understand. So, or mamale, understand. Just like the neshama fills the goof, God fills the world. So we should be able to understand all sorts of things about or mamale. We've said this before. We've talked about it. That what? Chas v'sholem, you believe that God created the world. God forbid you should believe God created the world. You should know God created the world, and you should be able to explain how it happened. What do you believe in? Atzmus, the essence of God. That only your emunah can touch. Emunah can go places intellect can't. So your emunah connects to that level of godliness. It brings it down into your intellect to the extent that you're aware intellectually of its existence and can talk about it, how it relates to, or Sevev, or Mamala, and then there's a level beyond called Atzmos. That's what we did in the context of this Maamer. Okay, but to understand Atzmos is impossible. To understand Sevev, well, the level of understanding of Sevev is called Hasaga Shlilit, negative understanding. I know what it isn't. Sevev is a level of godly light that's too powerful to be clothed in kelim, and we should know what this means. Too powerful to be clothed in vessels, therefore it can't express itself in any distinguished and finite way. Okay, fine, because that's what kelim do. Kelim allow light to express itself in differentiated ways. Okay. Sevev is beyond that. So we just talked about Sevev. Infinite reality, does that exist in your consciousness? Yes, infinite reality, you know what that is. Again, you can talk about that. You don't know what it is, you know what it isn't. It's infinite, it's not finite. You can't say what it is, you can just say what it isn't. Okay, but you can talk about what it isn't, that means something. Mathematicians talk about infinite numbers. I don't know what they do with all that, but they can talk about it, right? Speaking about intellectuals, I mean, it's hard to be a mathematician if you're not an intellectual, because nothing they think about matters at all, except in some bizarre conceptual way. But I guess a physicist takes it and turns it into something, right? Isn't that what happens? The physicist takes what the mathematician's talking about, and then you and I can have a car.
Someone who spent 4 years studying math. That's downplaying it a little bit, but
Well, no, there are aspects, but I mean, it's pretty conceptual by the time they get serious about it.
He's talking about high school math.
Yeah. No. It's pretty conceptual.
I spent at that rate like 20 years studying math.
No, it's on a certain level, it's pure seichel. There's nothing else. Even physics, theoretically, you're talking about physical objects. Right? Not talking about that in math, just conceptual ideas, which is amazing. It's incredible. And it is, yes, you can apply it somehow. I mean, I have no clue how because I don't understand the math, but yes, of course it's applicable. I'm not talking, not the algebra we learned in the trigonometry. I got lost at a trigonometry. Those sines and cosines, leave me alone. Just leave me alone. Let me live my life.
That's what engineers do. We take the math over the wonderful math that we have to say and apply it.
Right. No, 100%. You explain to me what's trigonometry all about? Ultimately, how does it? You explained this to me once.
Yes, right here. We'll talk after.
Okay. You once explained that to me, and I found that very, very interesting because that's when I lost it. I was doing very, very well. I even made money to go to college because I was good at math. But trigonometry, I don't know, sines, cosines. Just leave me alone. What do you want from me? Planes. Was it planes? I don't know.
Planes and planes, yes.
Planes? Okay, thank you. See, I couldn't sleep tonight as if you hadn't told me. My days lapshis nefesh elchizim is beinin. Bis beinin is elchid nefesh nefesh like yochel isiga. Days there, what happens? A chakika klolis in the nefesh bahamis, the general impression on the animal soul that godliness can be understood, meaning I can actually think about it and discuss it. It can be part of my conscious reality. He can be part of my conscious reality. One of the people who are trying to convince people not to study Chassidus, unfortunately, there's still a few of those left. Very few, but a few. Right? There used to be a lot more. Right? What do they always say? Oh, come on, they don't understand what they're learning. That's what they always say. That's the first line. They always say, oh, it's just these deep ideas. No one, they don't understand. No one understands what they're talking about. Well, that's a sure sign that no one ever learned Chassidus. So what do the Rebbeim do? The Rebbeim take unbelievably sophisticated ideas and explain it to us in a very, very straightforward way, using masholim, using parables of physical reality and our own reality, and explain godliness to us very clearly, so that it's not hard to understand. Right? And it's really quite astounding. It's so kind of them to do that. Hine achar kach. Afterwards, once a person appreciates Elokus, and the Eibusher is banging around in their head, it's the great produce in the power of the ox. That it's transformed from its behemoshkeit, from its animalistic nature. And it goes up, and is incorporated by rishvei eish hachuka, the burning, fiery passion, shebenefesh elokis, in the godly soul. And as a matter of fact, it elevates the godly soul. Because there's one thing that there's one big advantage of the animal soul over the godly soul, and that's the passion of the animal soul. The animal soul is much more passionate than the godly soul. About what? Well, that depends, right? It can be passionate about things that are completely unhealthy, or it can be passionate about Elokus. Once you get the Nefesh Bahamis on board with Elokus, so then the Nefesh Bahamis doesn't walk anywhere. It runs. Right? When the Nefesh Bahamis wants something, it gets it. It might be Coca-Cola at 2 a.m, right? And so the person will look in the cupboard, there's no Coke. What are we going to do? Well, let's go get some. Okay. They steal their father's car and go find some gas station, and they walk into the store, and for some strange reason they're out of Coke, which doesn't happen, but okay. And they go to 3 different stores until they find the Coca-Cola they want. Maybe they want some special Coca-Cola. They find the Coca. They'll go to 3 different stores at 2 in the morning to find the Coca-Cola, because when the Nefesh Bahamis wants something, it wants it and it's serious about it and it's going to make sure it gets it. Okay, what if Nefesh Bahamis gets that way about the Eibishter? So it'll stay up until 3 in the morning and for bread. Why? Well, it might be that from 2 to 3 something's going to happen, right? Like I have to go to the new store. There was a store from 1 to 2. So I got Coke in that store, but there might be a different type of idea for bringing from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So I want that idea. Right? Rav Mendel Futterfass and his wife had 6 or 7 children pass away soon after childbirth. He davened to the Eibishter regarding a child who was born. And he said, in the schus of the fact, this is what he said, in the schus of the fact that I never left the Farbrengen early, let this child live. And he did. Rafael lived in London. He ended up having a son and a daughter who lived. The daughter was tragically killed in an accident when she was young, late 20s, 30s, car accident. He didn't have an easy life, man. But he was always besimcha. As a matter of fact, at his daughter's levaya, one of the most, I don't know what adjective to use exactly, so I'll let you use the adjective. One of the most whatever things that I've ever heard, I wasn't there, I just heard about it, is Rav Mendel at his daughter's levaya, having gone through everything he went through to have children. He was heard muttering to himself, Mendel, Simcha, Mendel, Simcha, joy. I don't know how you do that. But if you're living Elokus like Rav Mendel lived Elokus, so then I guess that's something you can challenge yourself to do. Which means we all have to challenge ourselves to do that, even though we might not be holding on that level. At least we know that's true. So the Nefesh Bahamis has changed. Instead of being passionate about, Coca-Cola, so it's passionate about a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah. Simcha is an expression of an appreciation of God in our midst.
So it's not, it's an expression of appreciation of Hashem, it's not an expression of joy.
Joy. It's just, the joy is a translation. What does joy mean? Where does Simcha come from? Simcha doesn't come from external events. Simcha comes from an inner appreciation of the godliness in the situation I find myself in. So now if I find godliness in every situation, so then that's why the Baal Shem Tov explains, Ivdos Hashem b'simcha is not that you should serve God with joy. Ivdos Hashem, serve God. How? Be b'simcha. If you are b'simcha, you are serving God. Not happy. Happy you can do with drugs. That's not a problem. Simcha. Inner joy. Appreciation of God in our midst. So we told that story about the sons of Rav. The sons of Rav, after being beaten up by a young Nazi, Yamach Shmai, bleeding on the ground in the barracks in some camp in Nazi Germany. Probably the camp was in Poland. So he started laughing. Why was he laughing? This bothered the Nazi more than anything, that after beating the living daylights out of this Jew, he was laughing. And why was he laughing? So he asked him, stupid Jew, why are you laughing? And the Tzanz Rav said, because I'm so happy that I'm me and not you. I would rather be the Jew beaten up than the Nazi doing the beating. Who would want to be that Nazi? My goodness gracious. And that's all in all fairness, just the mercy of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, the grace of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that we happen to be born on the right side of the tracks. Could have just as easily been a Hamasnik. And if you were born in Gaza and you were educated that way, what would you have been?
Sure.
Okay, so thank God.
Yeah.
Does that mean that they're not evil? They're evil. They're definitely evil, right? I mean, you're responsible for your actions. Even if people are teaching you evil things, you at some point have to stand up and say, no, this is evil. This is wrong. Okay, but say that. The teachers are more evil than the students. Okay, until a certain point. Right? But Baruch Hashem. Or you don't have to be a chamistik. You just have to be an azan. Right? The innocent citizen, as if there is one. Right? Next time anybody throws that your way, if you happen to be visiting somewhere where people might think about that idea that there's such a thing called an innocent azan, you can tell them that this is secondhand, because I heard it from a soldier who was there. I wasn't there. In Khan Yunis, when we entered into Khan Yunis about a few months into the war, right? Went house to house, did not find one house without ammunition in Khan Yunis. Not one. Khan Yunis is a big city. I was there in Miloim years and years and years and years ago. It's a big city. One of the most, even then it was just so ugly. This is when we were in charge. Okay, not one house. So don't talk about innocent Palestinians, so to speak. Doesn't mean you don't feel bad for the, women and children getting bombed. Okay, say that, but you voted for these guys. Gullus is sometimes harder than it has to be. But we can get the Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh Bahamis, to appreciate God in every situation, and then the Nefesh Bahamis is B'simcha, because that's where Simcha comes from. And that's what Mendel was challenging himself. Simcha. And in our generation, the Rebbe tells us explicitly, Aveda has to be done B'simcha. It's the only way we'll succeed in our Aveda. If we and it's interesting, if you learn our Rebbe's Chassidus, how often does the Rebbe ever talk about the Nefesh Bahamis B'chol? Yitzhak Hara. Almost never. What's the Rebbe talking about all the time? Your godly soul. He's trying to sensitize us to our godly soul. He teaches about our animal soul. We all have a postdoc in animal soul. That's not a problem. We're experts. Right? What about the godly soul? The Rebbe talks about the godly soul constantly. Every now and then, the Nefesh Bahamis comes up in conversation. Gumaychein al yedei korban agashmi. So too, through the physical korban, haramizbader hanitzutze datzach. Right? Just like through the physical korban, taking the animal, putting it on the altar. What do? You rectify the sparks of the datzach, deepen, mineral, semeach, vegetable, chai, animal. 3 different levels of physical reality, right? There's a mem at the end, which refers to us, called the medaber, the one who speaks. Hine, kemechein, similarly, al yedei akrova baruchli, so too through the spiritual sacrifice. Haramizbader, it's rectified, umishapech, and transformed. Hachashucha, the darkness, the Nefesh Bahamis, of the Nefesh Bahamis lenahara, to light. Meaning the Nefesh Bahamis naturally is a place of darkness, meaning a place that's not sensitive to Elokus. But what can you do? You can bring godliness into that place in a very, very real way. And again, we've mentioned it before, but the only reason we are sitting in this room right now is because our Nefesh Bahamis decided to do that. Now, it can do that for all the wrong reasons, or it can do that for all the right reasons, Beseda. If you were 18-year-old girls in a SEM, post-high school SEM, so it might be that some of you are sitting here because they take attendance, and if you're not here, you get punished. Okay, fine. I don't think that applies to anybody who shows up to Chassidus in Mayanot. As far as I know, the punishments aren't so terrible. You get less oil on your cheese, the noodle thing on Tuesdays or whatever day. No, it's not Tuesdays. Monday. Monday, the cheese thing, the anti-Ashkenazi male thing. Yeah. Okay, right? Okay. So, Pete, why are you sitting here? You're sitting here because your Nefesh Bahamis decided that learning Chassidus is a good thing to do, and that's what you want to do. Why do I say Nefesh Bahamis? Well, because you made a conscious decision, and that's your Nefesh Bahamis. Yes, the impetus is coming from the Nefesh Elokis. Of course, that's where it's coming from. But your Nefesh Bahamis decided to do it because you can't do anything unless your Nefesh Bahamis agrees. Right? Okay. So we can change our Nefesh Bahamis. All of a sudden, Nefesh Bahamis finds learning Chassidus at 7:30 in the morning more interesting than whatever else might be on, out there, sleeping or, watching Netflix. Of the two, sleep. If you're going to choose between one of those two, just sleep. Right? V'zeu v'asuli mikdash v'shechanti b'seichem. Now back to the pasuk that we started in the first chapter with. V'asuli mikdash, they should build for me a mikdash v'shechanti b'seichem, and I will dwell amongst them. And what does that mean? I will dwell amongst them. It doesn't say I'll dwell in it. Build me a house and I'll live in it. They should build for me a mikdash, which is the avodah we just discussed. Make your conscious reality a holy place, a dwelling place for God. And what'll happen? I'll dwell in you. Each and every one of us will be a place where godliness is revealed. And if you reveal godliness in your conscious reality, then you reveal godliness in the world because you are part of the world. And so you make the world a holier place, a healthier place, and ultimately bring about the complete revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Eilam Hazeh through the coming of Mashiach. You're a brick in the wall. Why? Well, because you just revealed God in Eilam Hazeh. How did I reveal God in Eilam Hazeh? Well, you're part of Eilam Hazeh, and God's revealed in your conscious reality. He's there. Everything you understand and comprehend is understood and comprehended within the context of understanding godly reality. Ad k'dei kach that you can appreciate the fact that the reason you made the green light is because God wanted you to. It's called hashgacha pratis. So thank you. Is that a small thing? Okay, it's a small thing. I understand. He's only in the big things. If he's only in the big things, you don't believe in him. Most people think he's only in the bad things. The only time they ever think about him is when bad things happen and they have all these questions on him. What about all the good stuff? He's not responsible for that? Yes, he's responsible for that too. Is there what you and I would call, so to speak, bad stuff? I mean, we know, okay, fine. Philosophically, we know it's not bad. Good, I get that, and that's true. It's not bad. Okay, but there's things that aren't revealed good. Everybody blames God for that. It's always his fault. Death, always God. Life, oh no. Don't want to put him in there. Why? Because if I put him in there, now I'm obligated. Death, I can just get mad at him. And then I'm not obligated at all. I can do whatever I want. But if I put him in life, oh, now I'm in trouble. I actually have to be serious about what I do. I can't just do whatever I want anymore. But I want to do whatever I want. That's a reasonable thing for the Nefesh Bahamis to want to do, whatever it wants. Well, okay. But as soon as I believe in God, I can't do that anymore. That's why it's convenient not to. It's just not true. It's convenient. It doesn't seem to work though, because it's not like there's a bunch of happy people walking around. V'zeu v'asli mikdash v'shechanti b'seicham, b'seich kol echad ve'echad. Harei, behold, al yedei avedosei, through his aveda, bebechinas iskafia, on the level of iskafia, subduing the Yetzer Hara. That we call discipline. Va'ikr, but the essence is hamevi lidei hafcha, that ultimately it should come to a state of transforming. So that's simply enough to discipline myself. Discipline is the Nefesh Bahamis from below above. And it's important, and without that nothing works. But the real Aveda is the Ishavcha, which comes from the illumination of the Nefesh Bahamis with the light of the Nefesh Elokis. That's why we're not just a puppy who's being, learning how to go outside as opposed to on the carpet. Right? Because if that's a Veda, so Beseder, but nothing happened. We didn't change. The puppy is still exactly the same puppy. He hasn't been elevated in any way, shape, or form. He's just better behaved. So is it simply about being better behaved? Well, we should be better behaved. That's true. But really what it's all about is being illuminated by the light of the Nefesh Elokis. And so life is a whole different experience. And every single one of us has this Nefesh Elokis. And that's what our life is about, is trying to access that Nefesh Elokis. That's who you really are. Einod Malvada. It's all him. Okay. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means all sorts of things. It means there's going to be things I don't understand, because things will happen that if it'll be easier to explain them if there's no him. Right? But there's also going to be many, 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 many more things that you can understand, right? Meaning the whole idea of the world and the purpose of it, etc., that you can understand. There will be certain things that we can't. I remember once hearing someone say that, but that once you connect to Elokus and especially start learning Chassidus in a serious way, so there's basically nothing you can't explain in reality, except one thing. Why bad things happen to good people. That you can't ever explain. Once you believe in God, you can't explain that. If you don't believe in God, well, what's bad? What's the bad thing? Why is that a bad thing? Right? And why shouldn't bad things happen to good people? What's good? Who says they're good people? Maybe they're just dumb. Maybe they're just missing out on everything that really is good. Right? Who says these people are good? Oh, they're nice people who are charitable and good neighbors. Who says that's good? Maybe they're just friars. You're stupid. Why don't you steal his car? I mean, why are you crazy? Just steal his car. Why wouldn't you want to steal his car? It's crazy. You're just a friar. In Israel, that's what they call it, a friar. Someone who lets people take advantage of them. Right? People don't steal in business. A friar. Right? You can make more money stealing in business. I understand, but there's a sucker born every minute. Isn't that a famous? American sucker born every minute? Who's that sucker? The guy you're ripping off, right? I mean, that's basically what he's saying. I can rip this guy off from his money because he's a sucker. I can take advantage of him. Oh, what a nice guy! Right? Nice guys finish last. Right? Good. If you're a jerk, nice guys finish last. If you're a real person, then nice guys finish first. And creeps finish last. And even if the creep ended up with more money than anybody else, or more fame, or more, who cares? The guy who started Apple was one of the greatest failures in humankind ever. Even though he affected the lives of... how many people in the history of humankind have affected as many lives as he affected? Very few. I mean, maybe none, because he affected lives at a time when there were 8 billion people instead of 1 billion people. I mean, it's astounding. Absolute failure as a human being. His kids hated him. His wife hated his ex-wife. Hated him. His friends hated him. When he died, they had to find some people who say things, well, he wasn't really that bad. That's what they were saying about him when he died. When you got to know him, he wasn't really such a creep. What an abject failure as a human being. Successful businessman, wow. Successful entrepreneur. Successful in doing something that was really, I mean, the jury's out whether it was good for the world or bad for the world, obviously, right? I mean, we're not so sure that these things are really good. Right? But that being said, unbelievable effect on the world, but it's just a failed human being. Unbelievable. So what's real? What's good? What's positive? Some people call him the most successful person ever. Why? He made a lot of money, and he was famous, and he did a lot of stuff that, he definitely did a lot of stuff. I mean, again, the jury's out on whether it's good or bad. Right? There's a Lubavitcher Rebbe in Milan. It's the only Lubavitcher Rebbe in the world that does not allow the girls to come with a smartphone. They're not allowed to come to Milan with a smartphone. All the other Sems, to their credit, they take the smartphone first thing in the morning and they give it back to them at the end of the learning day. They don't have it all day. It's in a locker. That's part of the way they take attendance, is they have these little, like bookshelves, only small, just big, and you have to put your cell phone in there. If your cell phone's not in there, that means you're not in Chassidus in the morning, because why isn't your cell phone in there? Right? So they don't even have to go to the class. They just see the cell phones. They're locked up, and the girls can't touch them all day long. And they get them at night. Okay. In Milan, they're not allowed to bring them to Milan. There is a computer there, and they can get in touch with their parents on computer. I don't know exactly how they do it, but they can be in contact with their parents on the computer, but no cell phones. I go there every year to Fabren. Every girl says it is the most liberating experience they've ever had in their life. They feel free. Everybody says it. And of course, we're still completely and totally enslaved to it. We wouldn't do that. But they all say exactly the same thing. It's unbelievable. They all say it's incredibly liberating. Right? Well, we do it one day a week. Right? JLI, Sinai scholars, they give this cute little pouch. And you put your cell phone in it. The people who make a achlata, they're not going to touch their cell phone all Shabbos long when they're at Sinai scholars. There's a cute little sign on something about recharging your neshama, I think. Recharge your neshama, put away your cell phone. Something like, is that what it says? Recharging my human, something like that. It's very cute. And what do they all say at the end of Shabbos? Wow, that was amazing. Like, wow. So, good, bad. I mean, we're doing this, right? So this is good, right? I guess. I mean, I don't know why anybody would want to listen to me, but that's their problem. I mean, everybody has befir chofshis. Right? But what's good? Good is elokus. Good is godliness. That's why he's called God in English. That's what it means. It's good. And we can transform our nefesh abamis to appreciate good, to appreciate the Eibishter. V'hine, second line up, kadiskafya sitra achor, and we subdue the sitra achor, back to the statement that was the focal point of the first chapter. Kadiskafya sitra achor, when you subdue the sitra achor, istalak yikra, the kucha brichu, b'chul amir goes out the glory of a Kadosh Baruch Hu that exists in all the worlds equally. B'chinas ha'or v'gilui, the level of light and revelation, shu b'chinas seviv kol amim, which is the light that surrounds all the worlds, the light that's too powerful to be clothed in vessels. It's not mamale, it's seviv, and that we know about because we learned the first chapter. Kitzer, Yavari explains inyan karbonas ba'avoda, the notion of karbonas in avoda, in our service of God. The adam ki yakriv, a person who wants to come close. Sarach liyes mikem korban. That seems to be in the Kitzer. The Rebbe leaves out the first shot, that it's all dependent on you, meaning you can do it. And just explains the second shot, the actual avodah of it all. Right? Because the first is just the realization that I can do what has to be done. Okay, but now what do I have to do? I have to sacrifice nefesh bamis. How do I sacrifice nefesh bamis? Illuminate it with the light of the nefesh elokis. Adam ki yakriv tzarich liyes mikem korban. That has to be from you a korban. Eish shelamayla, the fire from above. The Eish milamata, the fire from below. When we bring the korban in the base of Mikdash, there was a fire from above, fire from below. We made the fire from below. God gave the fire from above. What's that in our Avodah? Av the nefesh elokis, the love of the godly soul. That's the fire from above. And the nefesh abamis, that's the fire from below that we have to kindle. Av the nefesh abamis, and how do we get to that place of love of the nefesh abamis? How does conscious me love God? Ba al yedei, that comes through hislavshus nefesh elokis b'nefesh abamis, the inclothing of the animal, of the godly soul in the animal soul, meaning lisbeinin b'isbeinenus eloki shagam and nefesh abamis yochol asiger, to contemplate godliness in a way that the animal soul can appreciate it. Human intellect can understand unbelievably sophisticated ideas about God. So then it should, and if it does, the chances are that person is going to live godliness. Now, we can take anything and turn it into idiocy. That's true. But the chances are pretty good that a person who learns about Elokus is going to realize that maybe life is about the Eibishter and not about me. And it's also not about me in terms of impressing people with how much I know about God. Right? That's also not what it is. That doesn't mean a person shouldn't know a lot about God, but their business shouldn't be impressing other people about that. The business should be somehow helping people touch godliness in their life, which is an amazing thing. And it changes people's lives. No doubt about it. Okay, now Gimel. Gimel, this is where, having said everything we said in the first two chapters, the first chapter is mostly what we would call haskola, ideas, or mamale, or soivev, how the Eibishter created the world and why it's created in the way it is and what's the difference between the four worlds. And then we saw our Rebbe explain why it is that the ultimate intention is this place of seeming darkness, etc. that which is beyond light, which is emerged, which is revealed in the dark. Okay. Second chapter begins Aveda in a general way. The third chapter, now the Rebbe pulls out our kishkas, which the Frierdiker Rebbe is pretty good at. Ubezeh yuvan, and in this it's understood, Masha Mishkan, that the sanctuary in the desert, Hayami Atze Shitim Dafka, was made from Atze Shitim, Shitim wood. Shitim seems to be a species of cedar, right? But it's interesting. When it's talked about in the Torah, it's referred to as Shitim, Atze Shitim. Sometimes it's translated just by writing it in italics, Shittim. They don't even translate it. Sometimes it's translated as cedar, because it does seem to be some type of cedar. Now, sometimes it's translated as acacia wood. So that's a very interesting translation, because acacia wood, what you and I call acacia wood, grows only in the southern hemisphere. It doesn't grow in the northern hemisphere. We are in the northern hemisphere. Egypt is in the northern hemisphere. The Sinai Desert is in the northern hemisphere. The land of Israel is in the northern hemisphere, which of course you all know, but it's just nice to go over things we know and feel smart about. Okay. Evidently acacia wood, what you and I call acacia wood, grows in the southern hemisphere. So then why it is that we're translating the word shitim, atze shitim, as acacia wood, when it applies to wood that simple pshat, it can't be that Am Yisrael had to build a mishkan in the desert. It couldn't. How did they have that wood? It wasn't around. So the California Chumash, which is the best English book written in my humble opinion. Yeah, it was put out by Chabad of California. Anyway, it's not here. It's a 5 volume. It took away a Chumash. 5 volume set, but it also is a blue 1 volume. Okay. Is it over here? No, that's Art Scroll. And there is in Zal. There's a bunch of them in Zal. Anyway, that Chumash, it's called the California Chumash. It's called the Rebbe's Chumash. That's what it's called. It's not. There's the Gutnick Chumash. It's not that one. There's 2 English Chumashim. I mean, in Lubavitch, that are. Why do we? I mean, the Chumash is translated, but the commentary is in English. The Rebbe's Sikh is, etc. So this is the California Chumash, put out by Chabad of California, written by Rabbi Moshe Vishnevsky, mostly, who davens here now and then. Some of you have probably had Shabbos meals by them. They live in the building on Agrippus, at the bottom of Agrippus. That, right? Walk out of the yeshiva, take a left, cross over the traffic light. There's a building over there that they live in that building, as far as I know.
I heard there's a guy named Rabbi Baruch Kaplan that put some chapters in there.
I didn't put chapters. I didn't put chapters. I got to have, Moshe is one of my closest friends. Moshe was writing the book, and Moshe would get a list of the most important sikhs of the Rebbe on any particular parsha from Rabbi Arla Raskin in Crown Heights, who knows everything. And Rav Arla would send him, the list of sikhs. Moshe would send me the list of sikhs, say, if you want, you can write anything you want, but not on those. So I would look around for other stuff, and so I wrote a few little spritzlach here and there just to be part of it, because it's so amazing. But Moshe wrote the book. It's unbelievable what he did. His overviews on the parsha are just outstanding. They're amazing. There we go. So this book, this also comes in 4. Thank you very, very much. Comes in 5 volumes, but this book is amazing, absolutely amazing. He writes deep Siddish ideas in English. That's, first of all, a pleasure to read, because he can actually speak English and write English, and he explains them very, very well. He knows Chassidus backwards and forwards. He's amazing. So anyway, in this book, so I looked up Atze Shitim, because I was very interested to know how Moshe would translate it, because Moshe also wrote a translation. This part, this is the Rebbe's Sikhs, this part would take a week per parsha. Didn't take long at all to write the Rebbe's sichos below the Torah. So that took a year, just a week per parsha. This took close to 2 years. What's this? This is one of the most amazing things anybody ever did. He looked in 60 different translations of the Torah, Goyish, non-Jewish, non-Jewish, 60 different translations of the Torah. And translated the Torah the best he could in terms of what its taka really means, what the word really means. And then interpolated here is information based on all of the Rebbe's sichos, all of the Rebbe's Rashi sichos, explaining the Torah. This is just like a monumental work. This took 2 years to do. So that I had nothing to do with, right? A few of the little things in here might be me, but read the long ones because they're better. So Moshe, I looked up, I wanted to know, how does Moshe translate Atzei Shittim? Because Moshe, he's the best. So I looked in Parshas Truma, right, and wanted to find what does Moshe say about Atzei Shittim. So I'm just looking for the first mention of Atzei Shittim. Right? Here we go. Vasu Aaron Atzei Shittim. And Moshe says, where is it? Pasuk Yud. Okay, where's Pasuk Yud? They must make an ark of acacia wood. So I was so disappointed because I used to always get on my high horse and talk about acacia and how can they translate it this way, and then the Moshe translated it that way. So I called up Moshe. I call him Moses, and he calls me Benedict. Baruch, benediction, right? So I'm Benedict, right? Benny. So hi Moses, hi Benny, what's up? Moses, you're an abject failure. Why did you translate Atzei Shittim as acacia wood? So he said, well, that's what it seems to be. I said, well, how can it be? It's only in the southern hemisphere. He said, you're right, but now this is all peep shot. He discovered something. Now he was looking in botany books. He took this very seriously. Like he didn't just, he's not paid by the page. He really did an unbelievable job doing this book. And he is an intellectual. These things bother him. Like, what is it? He was looking up botany books. Now, where did we get the wood to build the Mishkan in the desert from? You should all know this. Yaakov Avinu brought cedar trees from Eretz Yisrael, saplings, down to Mitzrayim when he went down with his children. Mm-hmm. He brought the trees, little saplings, and they planted them in Goshen, which is where we were, and they grew up. They had 210 years to grow. They grew up into nice big cedar trees. We cut them down. How in the world we schlepped all this, I have no idea, but there were 3 million of us, so we figured it out. Probably it was us guys who were schlepping the trees. And we schlepped the trees into the desert, and God said, make a desert and use Atzei Shittim. We just happened to have some Atzei Shittim right here. All right? Okay, now, so Beferish, we took cedar trees, and there are psukim which refer to the cedar wood used in the Mishkan. So why is it called Atzei Shittim? So Moshe found something that this is all pshat. It says Medrash, we know where we got the wood, but al pi pshat, without the information from the Medrash. So where would we get the wood? So Moshe found something quite astounding, and I'm telling you this, I found it astounding. The pshat is that Yaakov Avinu brought it. This is not where we got the wood, but it happens to be very, very interesting. There is one place in the northern hemisphere where that species of cedar wood called acacia grows. In the southern Sinai desert, there is acacia wood down there, which is really astounding. So the botanists claim. So Al Pi Pshat, where could we have gotten the wood? It was around, like where we were, right? Al Pi Medrash, we know. Al Pi Emes, we know where we got the wood. We didn't get it from there, but it was there. Right? The aim is to make sure that even the Pshat can work. Right? Acacia wood. Now, why is it called Atzei Shittim? Let's just see a couple lines. It's 8:30, and we're going to stop. But as we started on time. Why is it from Atzei Shitim? Since the essential Avodah in the Mishkan and the Mikdash, who is to transform darkness to light in the simplest way imaginable. The Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash is taking physical reality, which is darkness, and turning it into light, into a vehicle for the revelation of God. I mean, that's what the Mishkan is. Taking physicality and using it to bring about a revelation of God in this world. I mean, it's the most obvious expression of transforming darkness to light. And why is physicality called dark? Because it hides God, hides the light. Shezeu inyan avodas hakarbonos kanal, and this is the avodah of karbonos, as we explained earlier, second chapter. Ubefrat, and particularly, the Rebbe says parenthetically, Maisa Kataris, the incense burning. It's interesting, the word carbon comes from the word karov. The word kataris comes from the word katar, which is a kesher, a bond. It's not that you're close, you're one with, you're bound up with. Because kataris is the highest expression of our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why it's shaykh to the sense of smell. The sense of smell is a very unique sense, Chassidus explains to us. Because if you look in the story of the Chet Eitz Hadas, and the story of what the lunch that took place in Gan Eden, which changed the course of history, so it says that she heard about the tree, she saw the tree, she touched the tree, and she ate the tree. What did she not do? Smell it. At no point does it talk about smell. Smell is the one sense that wasn't polluted by Chet Eitz Hadas, which is why sense of smell is very, very powerfully connected to your neshama, and that's why when someone's passed out, you give them smelling salts, and sometimes it jerks them back to life. Meaning, shining a light won't help, calling their name won't help, and it might be smelling salts will help, right? Because it's going to tie. Now, that also might not help if they're really out, okay? But that's something that'll help more than other things, because it's connected very powerfully to the source of their being. Okay, so that's Maisa Kataris. Let's just read one or two more lines just to see what Atzei Shitim is. So why is the Beis Hamikdash built from Atzei Shitim, from Shitim wood? Val Yedei Avodah Shebamikdash. Hine, Al Yedei Zeh, through this service in the Mikdash, Heir Gilu Elokus Ba'elam, it shined the revelation of godliness in the world. Why? Lochein Hayami Atzei Shitim. Therefore, it was from Atzei Shitim. Why? What does Shitim mean? Let's two more lines and we'll stop and we'll pick it up tomorrow. Hine, shita, the word shita, what does shita mean? A position. What's his shita? What does he hold? What's his position in this particular discussion? Okay, so that means to lean to one way or the other in a particular discussion. He leans towards something being mutter, or he leans towards something being asur. That's a shita. And that's what it means, to lean. Hine, shita perish nitiyah, to lean. Hainu, sheyesh davar shu emtzai, there's something in the middle. Vahataya, and leaning, le'ez tzad, to either side, lamaila above, or lamata or below, nikra shita. Oh, okay. V'chein perish shtus, also the word shtus, which comes from the same root. What does shtus mean? Folly, idiocy. Shaita is an idiot. Oh, so the word shtus comes from the same word. The shtus, huataya, is turning away mihayadiya v'chokhmah, from understanding and knowledge, from knowledge and wisdom. The yadiya v'asagi derech hamitzua, intellectual understanding is the middle path. Vataya, and turning away from that, hatayim is enikashtus. Four more words, then we stop. V'hine, yesh shtus delumaseh. There's negative shtus. That's what I was going to explain in the next two chapters. Negative shtus. But if we say there's negative shtus, what does that also seem to indicate? That there's positive shtus. And that's going to be the fifth chapter. That's the whole rest of the mind. Right? Shtus. There's shtus to klipa, and there's shtus to kedusha. What's shtus? Acting in a way that's not based on intellect. So that can either be ridiculous and stupid and dumb, or that can be going beyond intellect. That'll be shtus to kedusha. Okay, we'll see where we're going with this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Izzy, last week there was a gentleman who walked in, not